The Sinister Six has been in the news lately with a lot of new things bubbling up, seemingly confirming that this is Sony's plans for their Sony Marvel Universe. And I want to break down those new reports, but I also want to tell you why I actually don't think Sony should make a Sinister Six movie. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button like the Spider-Man himself, and let's get right into this video. So Sinister Six is all over the news. Tons of people making articles talking about this in videos. The Sinister Six movie likely to be happening over at Sony in their Sony Marvel Universe. Rumors picked back up for this when actor Dane DeHaan, who played the Green Goblin in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, recently did an interview talking about how not only were they going to make a Sinister Six movie, but that movie was actually already in development. Now that's cool and it does mean something, but it's a little bit like, didn't we already all know this? I mean, did you see that post-credit scene after The Amazing Spider-Man 2? But what you might not know is even after that movie came out and all signs pointed to Sony possibly not even continuing with Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield, Amy Pascal was actually still interested in making a Sinister Six movie with Drew Goddard. Drew Goddard was going to direct the Sinister Six movie, and Amy Pascal loves him. She's spoken like his praises in a ton of different interviews, and just interesting to note is the fact that Goddard actually is personally responsible for a lot of the dopest things when it comes to the Netflix Daredevil show. This guy pretty much was responsible for how awesome that show is, but he actually left before it started filming to go do the Sinister Six movie. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. 420 joke. This is April 20th. It's a holiday for potheads, whatever. But to me, this just is kind of obvious, guys. This all goes back to the Amy Pascal interview where she made Kevin Feige cringe in front of all of us. It was very funny, but she was essentially saying in that interview that they are creating a world for Peter Parker to come back into. This was always the plan. She was always creating this sort of a world with the idea of the Sinister Six being in play for Peter Parker to come back to. And as far as all the reports and speculation, most people believe that that's going to be something Sony does down the line, and that this third Spider-Man movie, which Kevin Feige will be producing, will likely introduce the character of Kraven the Hunter, or potentially another member of the Sinister Six. But here's where I'm going to sort of deviate from what most people think is going to happen and expect to happen, and tell you why A, I do not think Sony should do a Sinister Six movie, and B, why Kevin Feige should do the Sinister Six movie immediately for Spider-Man 3. So number one, why do I think Sony should not make a Sinister Six movie? Well, this actually has a lot to do with what most Marvel fans have a problem with as far as Sony doing their own Marvel Universe. And if you've been watching the channel for a while, you'll know that I'm actually a fan of what Sony is doing so far with their Sony Marvel Universe. I like the Venom movie. I love the idea of the Morbius movie. It looks really cool. And I kind of see it as sort of this 90s different flavor type comic book universe, which I am excited to see the Tom Holland Spider-Man in and playing around in. However, where we're at in the story of Peter Parker, the story of the MCU, and what I think is going on over in the Sony Marvel Universe, I fear for how all of this will tie together. Meaning, if they wrap up the story of Peter having to go through his identity crisis, having to go through all of these people thinking he's a murderer and knowing that he's Spider-Man, if he goes through all of that and then on the other side of that has to face down the Sinister Six, it just feels weird. It feels like kind of a mismatch in the story. And I also have a really hard time just seeing how that would work in sort of the tone that they're setting up in the Sony Marvel Universe, particularly with the fact that Venom is kind of an anti-hero and the Vulture is sympathetic to Peter as well. You see, a lot of Marvel fans are concerned that Sony will take Spider-Man and do all sorts of crazy stuff with him without being concerned with how that fits into the continuity of the MCU, thus making this sort of canon that they're trying to establish really confusing and sort of taking us out of the enjoyment of the character. And in some weird way, I almost feel like Feige was aware of this, and the story they're telling with Peter Parker in the first two Spider-Man movies, especially with that cliffhanger ending, has sort of positioned the next Spider-Man movie to actually be the best place to introduce the Sinister Six and do a Sinister Six movie that is going after Peter Parker. And this is sort of the second part of my point as to why I think this would make the most sense for the third Kevin Feige produced Spider-Man movie. And here's why. Mostly this has to do with this being the perfect opportunity for a team of people to be going after after Spider-Man, have a bunch of information on him, and have separate motivating factors that all lead them to one conclusion. And this is actually crucially important for what they do next with these characters and Spider-Man. So let's go through the potential Sinister Six members and what their motivations could be for this scenario, and I think you'll see where my head is at. So first, let's knock off Kraven really easily here. Kraven, of course, trying to find the world's most dangerous game. Spider-Man presents himself, the whole news, everybody knows who Spider-Man is. It's an obvious in for him to want to hunt Spider-Man down. Now, the Vulture would be in an interesting position here because, of course, he wants Spider-Man and Peter off the table. He does know that it is indeed Peter Parker. He was kind of holding that secret away from Scorpion, but he would probably want Peter to just be taken to the authorities and put in prison for his false crimes, right? Like, that seems totally doable for that character, and it could create an interesting conflict among the members of the Sinister Six when we get to that point in the story. And one of the characters he'd probably have conflict with would be Scorpion. Scorpion would just want Peter Parker to be dead, right? So he'd be teaming up with the Sinister Six, and in his mind, he's like, nah, we're just gonna kill this kid. Now, next up would be Venom, and this is why this is so cool, because Eddie Brock and Venom would likely want to go after Spider-Man, especially if they were positioned to sort of want to take him off the board for the safety of the planet. I mean, they seem to care about the planet, and in this weird anti-hero way, I could see them being convinced by someone that they would have to go take Spider-Man out. That's the best thing for the planet. But also, Eddie Brock, as a journalist, would likely be looking for the truth of this story. You don't turn off your journalist brain. So he'd probably be doing this, going with the Sinister Six, but also be trying to figure out the truth of the story. And eventually, I think what this could be is a place where Eddie Brock could write an article that exonerates Peter Parker, helping him out and sort of paving the way for them to have a friendship and do team-ups down the line. Because, of course, we want to see Spider-Man and Venom fight each other, but we also want to see them team up. I mean, Venom is being positioned as an anti-hero in this Sony Marvel Universe. Mysterio, if he's alive still, would probably want Peter to be in jail or to be in prison, so he'd be going after him for that. And Morbius would likely be wanting to keep him in check as well, but possibly be interested in his genetics. So that could be a reason that Morbius would be going along. And I actually think it would be very interesting if this team was put together by none other than Norman Osborn. Because yes, I'm going to say Dark Avengers again, and if the plan for Marvel is to do Dark Avengers and Sony wants to have some continuity with what the MCU is doing, then they would do that and then have the Sinister Six almost be a sort of heroic group. Have them be like a group of Thunderbolts or Dark Avengers in this timeline and sort of create continuity with the MCU that way. They would essentially be a group of 6 different Spider-Man villains that are trying to hunt Spider-Man down, but under the guise of trying to do a public service, because Spider-Man is public enemy number 1. So they might even be thought of as heroes if they do this. And so again, for the continuity, for the sake of Sony's universe going forward, for the sake of the character motivations making sense, I truly believe that this would be a great scenario. And I really want Feige to do Sinister Six for the next Spider-Man movie. Don't wait. Go crazy with it. Blow it up. And then Sony can have their universe sort of have continuity right along parallel with what the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing past Phase 4. That's the news and my crazy quarantine-induced thoughts about Sinister Six. And so I want to know what you think about this. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Now let's shout out Uriah Slaughter. Yes, indeed, Mark Gargan is the Dark Avenger Spider-Man. And whoa, what do you know? That character happens to be Scorpion in the Spider-Man Homecoming and Morbius and Sony movies. Shout out to you, Uriah. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know how close you've been paying attention to our coverage here. I want to know what Phase 5 Marvel movie is Spider-Man rumored to be in? It's a sequel to a Phase 3 film. So what film am I talking about? What movie is Tom Holland rumored to be in next in the MCU? Answer that question in the comments section below. Another reminder, folks, we're looking for teams for our massive trivia contest. A bunch of nerdy questions with dope prizes. You can participate in teams of 4. If you have a team of 4 or you're a solo person looking to be in a team of 4, email us at thedenofnerds@gmail.com or hit us up on our social media. You can click or tap right there to get lost down a nerdy rabbit hole on some of our content. Like this video if you liked it. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video.